Alright, so if you've come to this video, I'm assuming you've come to this video for one of two reasons. Alright, either you're struggling with uncontrollable porn use or someone you love is struggling with uncontrollable porn use. So if I had to guess, I would say that you've already tried the usual things. Alright, so you've tried filters, you've tried blockers, you've tried just avoidance, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment. You've tried getting rid of your smartphone, using a dumb phone. Maybe you tried the rubber band method, right? 12-step programs, accountability partners. Maybe even tried professional counseling, all right? But I bet it didn't work, right? Like that's why you're here. That's why you're still looking for answers, okay? So why? Why did it not work? All right, so let me tell you a story. When I was in college, I was studying to be a pastor. About junior year of college, my porn problem was so bad that I realized I had come to a decision point. So I was either going to continue down that career path or I was going to have to do something drastic to take care of the problem. Okay, so I decided to take a semester off. Bought myself a dumb phone. I isolated myself in my friend's apartment and just crashed with him for about 4 months and basically tried to cut myself off completely from the internet. I thought it was the perfect plan. Without access to the internet for 4 months, I would be able to rewire my brain and I would no longer be addicted to pornography. It was like this magical, perfect plan that I had in my mind. But I bet you've already guessed that didn't work at all. In fact, it probably made me worse. So the problem is that even if the internet wasn't available to me, I was still there, right? That's the issue. And here lies the first secret in understanding your porn addiction. Okay, porn is only about 5 to 10% of the problem. Yeah, I mean, hearing that might make you want to push back against that, want to disagree, but that's really it. And I know some of the things you might be thinking. What about all the neuroscience, all the science out there that proves that porn does all this stuff to your brain? It rewires the brain and causes all of these dysfunctional changes, and that's all true, 100%. Porn is really unlike anything we've seen as human beings up until this point of history. But that doesn't make it the primary problem. So the truth is, you could eradicate all the porn off the face of the planet and inject yourself with chemically castrating hormones, and you would still struggle with something. Okay, you would find something else to fulfill that purpose that pornography was serving for you. Okay, and it is serving some type of purpose. So when I ask most people, what does porn do for you? The answer is usually something like nothing. Like I don't think porn does anything good for me. Like I realize, it's all bad, right? But I always push back on that because if that were true, you probably wouldn't be using it, right? Our brains are wired to seek out that which benefits us. So in some way, pornography is beneficial to you. It's doing something for you. You just might not be aware of what that is yet. So there are two ways that porn benefits us for the most part. By giving you something good or by taking away something bad. Right? So those are two very simple, oversimplified, basically, ways that porn benefits us. So the first one is simple, right? You watch porn, you feel good. And the second one can be a little bit more complicated and covert, okay? If you're feeling negative and then you watch porn, suddenly you're not feeling those negative emotions, at least while you're watching it. So this reinforces porn use. This is actually what we refer to as negative reinforcement. So it's taking away something bad and reinforcing that behavior. So, this can be simple and obvious, like you you have something really bad going on in your life, and so yeah, you turn to porn to cope. Or it can be much more complex, such as having some really deep underlying insecurities that you're kind of using porn to cover up and cope with, that you're not even aware of. You don't even realize that that's what you're doing, but you're doing it every day. And so oftentimes we look at the behavioral aspects of porn use and try to treat it that way. We try to treat it with behaviorism, with behavior modification. But the reason I say that porn addiction is only 5 to 10% of the problem is because the majority of the problem really lies under the surface. It lies beneath the behaviors. It's what's driving those behaviors that's really the problem. And so we have this landscape island in our yard, okay? And in it there is this one particular weed, okay? And it's really just a plant, probably, that somebody planted there a long time ago. But it's impossible to get rid of. I've tried everything in the world to get rid of this thing. I've cut it down as low as I can cut it. I've added weed killer to it. I've added really strong plant killers to it. I mean, year after year, season after season, I've come back and tried to cut this thing off, but it keeps coming back. And the reason is because I have dug as deep as I can get on this thing, and that taproot goes way down deep into the ground. And so, in a similar sense, if we don't kill the root, if we don't get to the root of the problem, then the reason, the source, is going to continue to produce that which you see above ground, that behavior. You can cut it off at the top, you can squelch it for a season, but it's always going to reproduce, and it may reproduce in a different way, but it's always going to reproduce. It's going to come back up. And so think about this for a second. Even if you were to use behavior modification to go 30, 60, 180 days without watching porn, if you never take care of the thing that led you to porn in the first place, that made you vulnerable to becoming addicted in the first place, doesn't that leave you just as susceptible to becoming addicted all over again in the future? Right? So that's why we have to focus not just on cutting off the behavior that you see, but finding the root, finding the source, finding the thing that's driving that behavior, and addressing that as well. So there's nothing magical, okay, about going any specific number of days without porn. You don't suddenly become immune to pornography once you hit that 90-day mark or 180-day mark. It's not like you're forever not going to be able to look at porn once you hit X number of days. All right? And for some of you, that scares the daylights out of you, because you've kind of had this idea of what recovery is in your head as, I've just got to get to this many days and I'll be good. But the reality is you will always be faced with opportunities to watch porn. So the truth is you have to become resilient in the face of opportunity. There is no amount of blocking and avoiding that you will ever be able to do to completely eliminate porn from your life, the opportunity to watch porn. So it is an absolute necessity for you to have the ability to look the opportunity to watch porn in the face and resist it. And that doesn't come from just hitting some magical number of days. That comes from a secret recipe. Okay, it comes from a couple of things. All right, so here's a few tips. All right, here's a few tips for you to help you get there, to get to that point. All right, so I mentioned that porn is only 5 to 10% of the problem. So what's the other 95%? All right, so it can sort of be summarized in these 4 components. that make up the whole person. All right, so if we think of a person and their needs and who they are, they kind of accumulates 4 different areas. Okay, it's biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. So if we have needs and deficits in any of those 4 areas, then those are things that may be contributing to the problem and maybe things that we need to work on. All right, so I'm going to go into each of these things more in depth in future videos. All right, so if you want to subscribe to the channel, that's awesome. All right, for now, I want to focus on one aspect, okay, that most people get wrong when trying to overcome porn, and it can be summarized in one word, all right, and that's mindset. Okay, so the way that you think about your addiction is the number one thing that is keeping you stuck. So I'm going to say that again because you probably don't believe it. It doesn't sound true to you, all right? But I promise it is true. So the thoughts that you think towards your addiction are the number one thing keeping you stuck in your addiction. All right, so this may be the most important part of this video, okay? So you have to be willing to deconstruct everything you've learned and believed about addiction up to this point if you want to change. Because we all come in with these preconceived notions about what addiction is, and we've learned all these things trying to overcome this. But you've got to be willing to let go of all of that and relearn everything. So here's the big news. All right. A lot of things that you've learned about addiction up to this point have been wrong. Okay, so let me explain. Back in the 1920s and 30s, addiction it wasn't even really widely accepted as a legitimate thing. Okay, it was seen more as a moral failing, right? And then the 12-step program stepped onto the scene. And now AA has done some really great things for some people, and so have the other 12-step programs. But the thing about AA and the 12-step programs is they were not founded by doctors or scientists. They were founded by actually a group of lawyers and other men who were just struggling with alcoholism and wanted to help. But the principles were not based in science. And it was actually started as a faith-based program, and really, the principles aren't really all that biblical either if you're a person of faith and you really think about it. So the very first step in these programs is admitting powerlessness over your addiction. All right, ever since the 12-step programs became popular, this has really been the commonly held belief about addiction treatment, is that you have to admit that you're powerless over your addiction. Addiction is seen as a disease and the individual is helpless. The only way to get better is to admit that you're powerless and reach out for help. Now, it's great to reach out for help, okay, but you should be aware of your limitations and reach out for support. Those are great things. I'm not bashing that part at all. But you're not powerless. I mean, that's just a reality. You're not powerless. In fact, you have incredible power over your life and over this addiction. It's just lying inside of you as potential right now, rather than being utilized. So now I realize that not everyone who watches this will be of the Christian faith, and that's fine. All of this is still true for you, and those of us who do believe in Jesus, this is even more so true for us. The idea of powerlessness is a completely anti-biblical concept. Everything you read in the New Testament points to us being given power over our sin through Jesus and the Holy Spirit. I mean, if the same power that raised Christ Jesus from the dead lives in us, do you really think that we're powerless over anything? So here lies a big secret to recovery. All right? Empowerment, not powerlessness, is the secret to recovery. So here's another way you need to change the way you think about your addiction. Relapse. All right? I'm going to give you a major piece of advice right now. Stop counting days. I can give you a list of reasons why counting days is counterproductive to you. For instance, what happens when you go weeks without watching porn and then relapse? You start thinking, well, I'm only on day one, so it's no big deal if I do it again, right? No. Stop that process, okay? Stop thinking that way. Recovery is a continuum. Recovery is a process. Okay, so if you had gone 21 days and then you had a relapse, you're not starting back from zero. You just had a little bump in the road and you've been going good for 21 days. That's the thought process you need to have. And you need to have more grace for yourself in this process. Relapses are a part of recovery. And recovery is a mindset. It's not this magical number that you hit in X number of days without having any bumps. That's not what it is. So stop counting days and start thinking of recovery as more of a process. Okay? So, relapses are a part of recovery. And counting days is not going to benefit you. All right? So in closing, I want to share one last important thing that you can do to help yourself recover from porn addiction. Be nice to yourself. All right? And this is a big one. This thing is a process, like I mentioned. I wish I could give you a magical formula that would help you be able to change today and never look at porn again. Just today can give you a magic sauce and just you're never going to look at it again. But that's just not how recovery works. It's just not. And most people think recovery is linear. You know, it's just a straight line and you find something that works and then you never look at it again. But that's not the reality of it. The reality is it's messy. It's messy and it's a process that comes with little steps back and then you move forward, and a little step back and then you move forward. It's filled with setbacks and ups and downs and insights and fallbacks. So you have to be nice to yourself. You have to show yourself some grace, and most importantly, trust the process. Trust the process and don't give up on the process just because you've had a setback or two. Keep going with the process. Even when it seems like it's not working, keep going with the process. Keep trusting the process and keep showing yourself grace. Hey, if you felt like this video was helpful, but you feel like you need more in-depth help, something more intensive, something one-on-one, some coaching, some counseling, to really get to that root that we were talking about, to help develop this mindset that we're talking about, reach out to me. I've got my own private practice called Dynamis Counseling. I'll have the link in the description below, and we can work together, and we will do our best to cultivate this and get you where you want to be in your recovery, whatever that looks like. So check it out for more information, and we can do a free 30-minute consultation and figure out where you're at and where you'd like to be.